Good morning. This is Derek Belinsky. On today's Newsmaker show, segment 1 belongs to Kevin Sheen of EverPower Wind. In segment 2, we will have anti-wind Hartsville resident Peter Radon.
It's time for the Newsmaker Show on AM 1480 WLEA. Here's Brian O'Neill.
Good morning. This is Derek Belinsky, filling in for Brian O'Neill on this edition of the Newsmaker Show. With me today is EverPower Wind's Kevin Sheehan. Good morning, Kevin. How are you doing?
Good morning, Derek. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Just for our listeners who may not be familiar with the wind power debate, so to speak, can you tell us, Kevin, what your responsibilities are and what you bring to the table, so to speak?
Well, EverPower is a developer, owner, and operator of wind projects. We have 7 operating wind projects, 4 in Pennsylvania, 1 in New York, which is in your area in Steuben County. It's the Howard Wind Project, 1 in Illinois, and 1 in California.
Now, it's...
Sure, go ahead. Sorry.
Excuse me, I apologize. It's my understanding that the wind company wants to bring a wind farm to Hartsville and the Hornellsville area.
Well, we actually, that is true, but we're looking beyond that area as well. We started out looking primarily just at Hartsville and Hornellsville, and that would be kind of what we would classify the southern portion of our project area, but we've also done quite a bit of work and contracted with quite a few landowners in the Fremont, in the town of Fremont, and Cohocton, and Wayland, and Avoca, and kind of what we're calling the northern portion of our project area. So it would kind of be just, it encompasses a lot of the towns north of Howard, and we've kind of been concentrating more on that than we had in the town of Hartsville and Hornellsville recently, but we still have a great interest in trying to do something in Hartsville and Hornellsville.
So for those of us not familiar, with wind power and all that it brings, can you talk about some of the benefits and the positives that are coming from the wind farm itself?
Well, I think that the first thing we talk about is during construction and the number of construction jobs that are brought to the area or local people being hired to work on the wind farms. We had a percentage in the 70 to 80% range. I'll have to go back and verify exactly those numbers. But the number of people from the local area that worked on the Howard Wind Farm project was in that range of 70 to 80%, throughout the project. So that brought local benefits in the terms of jobs. We purchased all of the aggregate for the roads and for the roads that we did and any of the turn radius improvements that we did locally. We purchased all of the concrete that we used in the project locally, and each of those foundations required, I want to say it's 370 cubic yards of concrete, so that's about 37 truckloads of those trucks that you see with the big barrels on the back. That's 37 of those in a continuous pour, and those were all, purchased locally. All that cement was procured locally. We also, used local firms to fix the roads once we were done. There was a great deal of impact. Even right down to, we used Southern Tier Trucking to bring in a lot of our turbine components once they were ready to come in, and they brought them on site. So I would say first and foremost, the benefits are during construction would be the economic boost. Then after construction, of course, we paid lease, and we do pay lease agreements to the landowners, but we also pay a pilot and a host community agreement to the town of Howard. In New York, that host community agreement works out to about $8,300. The host community agreement and the pilot agreement work out to roughly $8,300 a year in the first year, and then that increases with inflation. So if you're talking about a 50 megawatt project, or in the case of Howard, it's 55.25 megawatts. You're looking at a yearly benefit to the town, schools, and counties of about $460,000 per year, and that's split between, as I mentioned, the towns, counties, and the schools. And then the final kind of economic benefit is we also make contributions to the Howard Fire Department, because that's a special use district, and I want to say that's about $38,000, give or take, per year that we contribute to there. So there's a great deal of economic benefit that accrues to the towns, school, and county.
And Kevin, obviously with anything new, it sparks some controversy and some opposition. What would you say to the people who believe that these wind farms will bring decreased property value to not only their property but their neighbors' property?
Well, certainly, anytime you bring something different and a change to a community, there's going to be concern. And we certainly, value the feedback that we get from people. I can tell you that, most of the studies done nationally will say that there is, no real decrease in property values, no statistical decrease in property values. Having said that, I can tell you that, we do realize that for some people, they don't like wind farms, and they wouldn't want to live in the area, and so there could be an increased, and an impact on someone who doesn't want to live in the area, and perhaps there would be some homes in an area that property value may go down simply because people don't want to move to that area. But if you look to Howard, I mean, it's very close. You haven't seen a mass exodus of people. You haven't seen, the town collapsing or anything like that. I think people are generally happy with the wind project and generally happy with that. I think it, probably took a few people some time to get used to. But overall, I think the situation is a positive one.
The other big argument is that these wind farms create a lot of noise and they are also an eyesore. What would you say to those critics?
Well, I think, first of all, we do an extensive amount of studies to make sure that the wind farm is sited in a responsible manner. These projects are not, built overnight by any means, and so we will do sound studies in the area to determine the best layouts. We use setbacks to prevent any undue impact of sound on a particular residence or sensitive receptor. Look, a wind turbine is a large device, and any time you have any sort of machinery that's large and moving, you're going to have sound from it. But we do try to take a lot of time to, site these properly so that any sort of impacts from sound is mitigated to the extent we can. We will work with, the industry guidelines in terms of, proper setting, proper setbacks and siting. We'll also work along with the guidelines given by the New York State DEC and as well as the town laws. Again, having said that, will you be able to hear a wind power project from points around the town and perhaps some residences? Absolutely. These are not silent machines, and some people just won't react positively to that. As far as if they're eyesores or not, the phrase is truly true. Is beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and some people are going to look at these and say, "Wow, that's beautiful." Some people are going to look at these and say, I don't care either way. And I know full well some people will look at these and say these are terrible eyesores, and I don't want to look at them. And that's unfortunate, but we can't, we can't hide from that. We do realize that some people won't have the best reaction to them, but we just do our best to cite them with as little impact as we can on the community.
Again, talking with Kevin Sheen from EverPower Wind this morning on the Newsmaker show. Kevin, you mentioned the layout of these wind farms. What would the distance be from the residents or the quote-unquote neighbors?
Yeah, what would happen is we'd follow a setback from a residence of at least 1,500 feet. And then there would also be property boundary setbacks, there's also setbacks from roads, power lines, things like that. So the layout really comes together once you learn how many people are willing to participate in the project. Then you factor in all the various setbacks, that's kind of how the layout is determined. It's an iterative process over, a period of time.
Kevin, just finally, all that being said, what would you like to leave our listeners with this morning?
Well, what I'd like to leave them with is that, you have a great example of a wind farm working in a community very close by. The Howard Wind Farm works very well. I would invite listeners to take a ride to the project area, take a ride through, take a look at the roads, go ahead and get out of their car while a turbine is blowing and get a sense for what it sounds like from certain distances to the extent that you can. And then I would encourage them. I know the town of Howard's board members have always been open and communicative when it comes to talking about the benefits and the positives of the wind power project in their town. You might attend a Howard Town Board meeting, and when it's time for open comments, ask a few questions and say what has been the impact, positive, negative, that sort of thing. I think that learning the most information you can is the way to do it. But I think if people drive around the Howard project area, they'll see some improved roads. They will see the project, obviously, and they'll be able to hear what a turbine actually sounds like, and just gather information for themselves.
Again, Kevin Sheen from EverPower Wind. Kevin, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Derek.
Back after this. I'm Derek Valinsky in for Brian O'Neill. On with us this morning in segment 2 is Peter Radon, a Hartsville resident who is opposed to the proposed wind project for Hartsville and Hornellsville. Peter Radon, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Derek. Thank you for having me.
Peter, you moved to Hartsville from California, and shortly after you got here, you found out that there is a proposed wind project that will be near where you live. If the project gets approved and wind turbines are something you say you don't want to live near, why is that?
Well, for several reasons. It's a quality of life issue. We moved here for the aesthetic beauty, the natural character of the area, the silence of it, the undisrupted ridge lines with one hill flowing into another, creating hollows and valleys, and the very thought that all that would be stolen and ruined by industrializing these hills with outsized 600-foot steel white spinning turbines, and yes, that is the size proposed, 600 feet tall. Now, to give people a sense of perspective, that is 2 vertical football fields high. And there's no way to have that sort of presence in a natural setting and have it not destroy what it presently is. I can't think of one objective, intelligent reason outside of greed, and I guess that would preclude it from being greed as intelligent, to go along with that. I can't think of one reason.
Peter, what do you say to the argument that it's the NIMBYs who are against wind? NIMBYs is in not in my backyard.
Well, not in any backyard. So what? I mean, is that a bad thing, not in my backyard? I don't want a whorehouse in my backyard. I don't want an industrial wasteland in my backyard. I don't want a track home development or glass and steel high-rises in my backyard. No intelligent person who appreciates the beauty of nature would want that in my backyard. I was offended when I saw these things propped up where I used to fly fish for trout in Wyoming County on Route 39. It's not my backyard, but it's where I used to fly fish. It's been totally ruined. It's in the town of Pike. It looks like a backdrop of a 1950s sci-fi movie. It's not my backyard, but a place I used to fly fish for trout in and loved has now been virtually destroyed, and that it broke my heart.
Peter, what about the argument about property rights, that a wind farmer has the right to put up a wind turbine on his or her own property because they own that land?
Well, that's just because someone owns something. That's why we have zoning laws, and we may not have zoning laws specifically here, but just because you own something doesn't mean that you should be able to do whatever you want. I mean, let's say some development company wants to put up high-rises, and they come to a dairy farmer and say, look, you have 100 acres that you're not using. We'd like to put up some 50-foot or 600-foot glass and steel high-rises. That doesn't give a homeowner a right just to profit and destroy the natural character of the area. But with wind turbines, the real negative aspect, aside from them ruining the natural character, is the noise they emit, the visual noise, the blight, the property values dropping, the noise they emit. They emit a infrasound. It's below conscious hearing, but your body picks it up, and it causes sleeplessness, nausea, vertigo. So there are real psychological, emotional, and medical downsides to this are a proven fact. Not everybody would be affected by that, but a lot of people would. So no, a property owner does not have a right to destroy the natural character of an area. If they want to bring on more sheep or cut down some trees and build another barn or paint it pink, I don't care. But to put up 600-foot wind turbines that affect everybody, no, I don't think they have that right.
In 2006, a wind company representative said that people who are against wind projects would have been against telephone poles, electricity, and things of that nature just because they are something that is new.
They're how tall? 30 feet tall. They don't spin. They're about a very small fraction of size. So the scale as a relative point is not a good one. Aside from the fact that telephone poles are absolutely necessary. If we were to snap our fingers right now and have telephone poles disappear, what would happen? We wouldn't have, if you have a landline for a phone, you couldn't call anybody. If you're getting electricity brought to your house, you wouldn't have electricity because they're carrying that electricity to your home. But we could snap our fingers and have turbines disappear and no one would blink an eye. We wouldn't miss a thing.
So far, we've been asking Peter Radon about the arguments made by wind farmers. So what about the anti-wind argument that wind projects hurt the neighbor's property value and that property values go down because no one wants to live near a wind turbine?
Well, that's very accurate. In fact, I know of a man in the town called Cohocton that has been severely infected with this blight. He was, I believe, fairly neutral on the issue 4.5 years ago, or however long ago it was before they put the turbines up there. As soon as they put them up, he was very impacted by them and was getting sick. It was shaking when the turbines were spinning. It would shake his windows. So he had to move. He can't live there because it's making him physically ill, and looking at them makes him sick as well. But his home was valued at $80,000 before the turbines. He's been on the market. He's been trying to sell the house for 4.5 years. He had one offer for $40,000. That's a 50% drop.
Finally, Peter, discuss the anti-wind argument that wind does not generate enough electricity to make it worthwhile.
Well, it's a good one. It's not worthwhile, and it's worse than it not producing a lot of energy. It actually, because of the nature of power that comes from wind turbines, is very erratic. When wind is not blowing, it's producing nothing. And when it does produce, it produces it in fits and starts. And so that doesn't interface well with a modern grid system that is run by generators. Generators have what is known as capacity value. That's an energy term, capacity value. And what that means is a specified amount of power on demand. Generator systems that are run by various fuels, whether it's clean-burning natural gas or coal or atomic energy or hydroelectric, they have capacity value. You flip a switch, you get the exact amount of energy that you need. When you attach wind power to a system like that, as they have to do, because wind power could never stand on its own. That causes a disruption to the generator systems because the energy comes in what they call skittering flux. And that makes the generators dance. They stop, they start quickly, they run at half measure, and that makes them run extremely inefficiently. So in other words, we're actually spending more on fossil fuels to compensate for the erratic, irrational flow of energy, and sometimes no energy flow at all. So we're not saving anything, and we're also not using, there's not a lessening of the issuing of CO2 gases into the atmosphere because generators have to work harder. So any small gains there might be are lost by generators having to work harder. Most people don't understand how grid systems work, and they don't understand the downside of wind.
We've been talking with Hartsville resident Peter Radon. Peter, thanks for joining us this morning.
Oh, Derek, my pleasure. Thank you for asking. Thank you for caring. You guys are doing a great job, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
ABC News is next, and then Brian Kilmeade. AM 1480 WLEA Cornell.